Welcome back. In this video we are going to do the Hello World project in Visual Studio Community. Start by launching Visual Studio Community. I have the application pinned to my taskbar at the bottom. You can do that, or you can do a search for Visual Studio just like we did in the intro video. So I am going to create a new project, and depending on what options you selected when you installed Visual Studio Community, that will determine what you see here. If console app does not show up for you, you can always do a search, or you can change the platform, or not platform, I'm sorry, the language. I'm going to change to C++. So then we have a lot of different options here. The console app is the option that I'm going to go with here. C++ console app. And we're going to select next here. And then go ahead and call the application or the project Hello World. By default, Visual Studio will try to save your application in source repo, users, your name, source repo. I've changed my location to OTC projects. You can change that if you like by clicking that ellipsis button on the right and navigating to where you would like to save that application. The solution name is going to be the same as the project name. This option down here, place solution and project in the same directory. That might be something you do want to check. It might be just a little bit easier for you to locate the CPP file, but I'll show you where to look for those. So create. And Visual Studio Community has made the Hello World project easier than it's ever been, because when you launch it, it automatically has Hello World ready for you. But let's talk about all the pieces here and just give you a quick rundown of Visual Studio Community. So this is a basic C++ program. At the top, starting with a hashtag, or these in the older days, these were called pound symbols, or the number symbol. But in any C++ application, you're going to have an include statement at the top. Those of you who have done application development in either C# or Java should be familiar with the include statements or the import statement. In those languages. It's the same thing here. IOStream is an actual file located in the .NET library in the C++ area, and it contains the definitions for some of the words that we will need to use, some of the key words that we use in our Hello World project. So we are importing it, so the syntax there is pound symbol, or hashtag include, and then open close angle brackets, or if you think of those as less than greater than, you should refer to them as angle brackets. So open angle bracket, IOStream, close angle bracket. Okay, that file, as I said, is located elsewhere, and we're just tapping into it to get the definitions for what we're using here. Every C++ program has a main function, and this is the main function in its entirety. And what you see here in the function signature, this area right here is called the function signature. That signature lets you know what the name of the function is, what return type the function has, in this case integer, or int. So the return type is first, then the function name, and then in parentheses you list all of the formal parameters, or all of the variables, values that you want to pass into the function or use inside of the function. In this case, you can see it's void or empty, so there is nothing being passed in. Open curly brace and close curly brace start and end a function body. So this is the function body or function definition. And we have a single line of code here. And here you see std or standard, and then 2 colons, and then cout. What that's doing is that is differentiating the definition of cout in the standard library versus if you wanted to give cout a different definition, or there are other libraries that have different definitions of cout, then this is letting it know what class to use that definition from. And so we're using it in the standard class. Okay, this next symbol, or set of symbols, double angle bracket, this is the insertion operator. So what that's saying is we are inserting into the cout, that's just the output window. We want to insert into it a literal string, or string literal. So the open double quotes it allows you to type words, literal strings, that will be interpreted as such and displayed as such. So here we have hello world, and then at the end here you'll see this \n. That \n is a escape character. You'll find that in the Savage text where that's listed in an upcoming videos. But for now, all you need to know about that is that's a special character letting the output window know that you want to end the line there, or that's an end line character. Okay. Notice the semicolon at the end. Every statement in a C++ program has a semicolon at the end, barring a few exceptions with when we create decision and repetition structures, and we'll get to that in future lessons. Okay. All right. Visual Studio was so kind as to give us some instructions here. If we want to debug it, we can hit Control plus F5, or we can click this debug button. You should have a green start button up here. It says Local Windows Debugger. If we click Run there, it should run our program. And we're just writing in console. So here is the console window output for our program. There it is, hello world, and then an end line. You also see some additional information that the Visual Studio Community Debugger places into that console window, letting you know where the file was that it created. So it does actually, when you debug a program in Visual Studio, it creates a Windows executable from your source code. The source code is the .cpp file. All right. So let's take a look where that file is located, and I'll show you not only where that executable is located, but where this CPP file is located. There you can see the pathway in that located right here, projects hello world. It's hello world.cpp. So if you click on Windows File Explorer down here at the bottom and navigate to that folder structure. Come on now. Okay, so I have a projects folder, and here is my Hello World project. Okay, here you will see all of the files. Now, in Windows, by default, these extensions may not be displayed. If you go to the View tab, there should be a checkbox in the Show Hide system here, or the Show Hide menu option category. And I think by default this file name extensions is unchecked. Please go ahead and check that. That way you can see the file extensions. Okay, and there should be one that's .cpp. That's our actual source code. And then the rest of these are solution and project files that Visual Studio uses for the IDE, and for specific for your solution and your project. Let's ignore those for now. If you open up the debug folder, that is where you will find the executable that Windows created, or Visual Studio IDE created when you compiled or when you debugged. So if I double click on that executable, it will launch that program that we just saw. Now you don't see it launch because it launches so fast and closes that all Windows console programs are self-terminating. The debugger leaves it open for us when we're debugging, but when I run the executable, notice down here on my taskbar, if I double click, you'll see it flash and then go away. So if we wanted to see that, we would have to do one of two things. We would either have to get input from the user, or we would have to have it pause. Actually, one of three. There's several ways you can get it to pause, or get the console window to stay open. I am going to add the get char function here. And what get char does, get character. It is a function that is actually waiting for you to input a character waiting for the user to input a character into the screen. So if I add that and then debug again, now notice in our debugger window, it is sitting there waiting for us to type something. Once I type anything and hit enter, then it concludes the program. Now, if we go back to our application in our project folder, this executable, if I run it, and notice the new date stamp on it, it's been modified. If I run it now, then you can see the window's launched and it's waiting for me to type something. Once I do, it closes. So that's just something to remember. The Windows or the Visual Studio Community Debugger will keep a window open, whereas once that executable, if you try to run that executable outside of this environment, then it will just flash and close. Okay, so that get char function, we're going to talk about that in upcoming lessons. I just wanted it included there for you so that you could see what's going on. Okay. The only other thing I want to tell you about Visual Studio for now, in the Solution Explorer window, this is where you can find organized all of the code files that are being used in this overall solution. So the top level is the solution, that's everything. And then nested under it, we have our Hello World project. This is how Visual Studio organizes your code base with a solution. And you can have multiple projects inside of a solution. In our case, we only have one project in the solution. And our project is called Hello World. And then here under the source files folder, that's where you'll find the CPP file. So let's say you accidentally close this. You're like, my code base went away. Where is it at? This is how you can reopen it. Double click on Hello World right there under source files, and then it'll reopen it. Let's say you accidentally close this solution window, and maybe you close all of these windows. Okay, all of those windows can be reopened by going to View, and under View you'll see Solution Explorer as well as Team Explorer. That is something that's used for code sharing with teams as a code repository tool. And we use it at OTC within the C# program, Microsoft, or the C# 1 and 2 classes. So I'm going to just click on this Solution Explorer, bring it back. These other two, the references, currently we don't have any, but you can add different references. External dependencies. Look at this big long list of files that are the external dependencies for our project. Notice there's IOStream right there. That's the one that we are using directly. If you want to look at IOStream, you can. I don't recommend a beginner looking through here. It is fairly short, but it's just including another file that actually has some more source code, and it has a few classes in there, one class in here. But these are all the header and CPP files that we use in C++, and we just tap into those. We just use those with include statements. Okay. The header files and resource files, those are empty as well. Okay, so that concludes our Hello World video. Email me with any questions that you might have, or if you have any issues, feel free to email me. Until then, know thyself.